M and S in Mrs. Gren stand for movement and sensing. All organisms do this in order to respond to internal or external changes. A stimulus is any change that's detected by an organism, like a hot hob you put your hand on. Cells in your hand are the receptors. The response in this case is you moving your hand away from the hob, hopefully. As the direction of the response is intentional, this is called a taxis. If the movement response is in a random direction, this is called kinesis, like bugs trying to move out of an area with unfavorable conditions, like a wet patch, as they don't know which way dry land is. A reflex is an involuntary response to a stimulus, whereby the nervous impulse bypasses the brain and just goes through the sensory neuron to a relay or intermediate neurons in the spinal cord to a motor neuron to the effector, the muscle that carries out the response. This is a reflex arc. Glands are also effectors. Even though plants don't have nerves, they still respond to their environment. Auxins, like IAA, are responsible for photo and geotropism. It's produced in the tips and shoots of a plant. Sunlight causes it to move to the shaded side of the shoot. There's an uneven distribution, and so there it causes the cells to elongate so the shoot bends towards the sun, or light source. It has the opposite effect in roots. It gathers on the underside of a root where it actually inhibits growth, so the root grows downwards. This is geotropism. There are many types of receptor. Pacinian corpuscles are found in your skin, but they're also found in your joints too. These detect changes in pressure caused by touching something or movement, by having stretch-mediated sodium channels that deform such that sodium ions move, causing a potential difference, which goes on to create an action potential in the single sensory neuron attached to it. Another important receptor are your retinal cells, photoreceptors. As you probably know already, the lens in your eye focuses light so it converges at the retina. The lens changes shape to accommodate for light coming from objects different distances away. There are two types of photoreceptors, cones, of which there are 3 subtypes that absorb green, blue and red wavelengths of light, and rods that just detect light, so they're monochromatic. The area with the highest density of cones is a little indent in the retina called the fovea. Each has its own synapse of a bipolar neuron. In good light, they provide high visual acuity. There are no photoreceptors at the point where the optic nerve connects to the retina, so that's where your blind spot is. There are more rods outside the fovea, so they're more useful for your peripheral vision. They contain the pigment rhodopsin. Even though they're more sensitive to low light, they share synapses, so offer lower visual acuity. The pacemaker cells in the heart, the sinoatrial and atrioventricular nodes, make it beat. They make the muscles contract. The sinoatrial node is connected to the medulla oblongata in the brain by the accelerator nerve and vagus nerve, which deliver higher and lower frequency of impulses to the heart to increase and decrease heart rate, respectively. High CO2 blood concentration is detected by chemoreceptors in some arteries and the brain due to its effect on the blood's pH. They send impulses more frequently to the medulla oblongata via the sympathetic pathway, which then in turn sends impulses more frequently to the sinoatrial node, increasing heart rate. Increased blood pressure is detected by receptors in the sinus. They send impulses at a higher frequency to the sinoatrial node via the medulla oblongata and the parasympathetic pathway, which slows heart rate and reduces pressure. Neurons, nerve cells, carry impulses through your body. They have similar organelles to a normal cell, but they have specialist adaptations. The dendrites on the cell body receive the impulse, and this action potential is then passed along the axon and onto another cell by the axon terminals across the synapse. In its resting state, the outside of the neuron's membrane is positively charged and the inside negatively charged. This is due to an imbalance between sodium and potassium ions. Sodium ions are pumped out of the axon and they can't diffuse back in. Potassium ions are also pumped in, but they can move out by facilitated diffusion, thanks to potassium ion channels. The resulting potential difference, called the resting potential, is minus 70 millivolts. When stimulated, sodium ion channels open up, which means they can move into the axon by facilitated diffusion, resulting in depolarization, and at minus 55 millivolts, positive feedback occurs, kicking it into overdrive, and it reaches its action potential of around plus 30 to 40 millivolts. As the potassium ions can diffuse out, this process is eventually reversed and it returns to its resting potential. It then enters its refractory period. This is important in ensuring that the impulse only moves in one direction. The action potential travels down the axon as more sodium ions move in through the membrane. However, if the axon has a myelin sheath, the action potential must jump between the gaps. These points are called the nodes of Ranvier. The speed of the impulse is also increased by a thicker axon diameter and a higher temperature due to faster diffusion and rate at which ATP is made that's needed for the sodium-potassium pump. The synapse is the junction between neurons. The membrane on the first neuron, the presynaptic neuron, calcium ion channels open so they can move into it. This causes neurotransmitter molecules to fuse with synaptic vesicles, which cross the gap, the synaptic cleft, and the neurotransmitter binds to receptors on the membrane of the dendrite on the postsynaptic neuron, causing sodium ion channels to open so they move into the neuron, and we've already covered what happens after that, along the axon. But back to the synapse, choline and acetyl are made by hydrolysis, and they diffuse back to be reused. As the neurotransmitter is only released by the axon terminal and travels to the dendrite on the postsynaptic neuron, never the other way around, it's another way of ensuring the action potential only travels in one direction. Synapses are also responsible for the amplification of the action potential by either the presynaptic neuron releasing the neurotransmitter numerous times over a short period, this is temporal summation, or multiple presynaptic neurons releasing neurotransmitter, this is spatial summation. As neurons are essentially digital, they either produce the action potential or they don't. A threshold of neurotransmitter needs to be incident on the dendrite in order to trigger an impulse, which is why this amplification is needed. There are muscles all through your body that do innumerable jobs, but you have voluntary control over your skeletal muscles. They're attached to your bones by ligaments, which are elastic tissue, and tendons, which are inelastic. Muscle cells are arranged tightly together, bound together by protein fibers called myofibrils. These are overlapping thick elements made of myosin and thin elements made of actin. A muscle contraction occurs by the following process. An action potential from a neuron causes calcium ion channels to open, and they move from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the sarcoplasm, essentially the cytoplasm of muscle cells. They then bind to the protein troponin. This causes the binding sites on the actin filaments to be exposed. The head of myosin binds to the actin, forming a cross bridge and releasing ADP. The myosin head then changes shape, pulling the actin. This is the power stroke. A molecule of ATP binds to the myosin head and it detaches from the actin filament. The ATP is hydrolyzed, moving the myosin head back to its original position, and the cycle repeats. When the nervous impulse ends, calcium ions are pumped back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum and the actin binding sites are covered so no longer exposed. The muscle has relaxed. Some muscle fibers contract slowly. These are slow twitch fibers used for extended periods of exercise. They have a large store of myoglobin, good blood supply, and many mitochondria, so they're adapted for aerobic respiration. Fast twitch are for your short, intense bursts of exercise. They have many thick filaments, high concentration of glycogen, and the enzymes needed for anaerobic respiration. Also a store of phosphocreatine, so ATP can be made quickly. Homeostasis is the term given to an organism's ability to regulate its internal conditions like temperature, water potential, pH, and blood glucose concentration, even when external conditions in its environment change. As you know, enzymes can denature if temperature increases too much or pH changes too much, so these are crucial. Homeostasis generally involves negative feedback mechanisms to keep conditions optimal. After eating food, blood glucose levels rise. This causes beta cells in the pancreas to secrete insulin, which moves to hepatocytes in the liver and muscle cells. Transport proteins fuse with the cell membrane, causing glucose to move into the cells, where it's used for respiration, or converted into glycogen. This is glycogenesis. It also inhibits alpha cells, which are involved in the opposite process. If blood glucose levels get too low, alpha cells in the pancreas secrete glucagon. This also inhibits beta cells in return. This causes hepatocytes to convert glycogen back into glucose, which diffuses into the blood. This is glycogenolysis. As there's less glucose available, cells can break down fatty acids and amino acids to synthesize the glucose needed for respiration. This is gluconeogenesis. Adrenaline is also responsible for raising blood glucose levels. It's secreted by the adrenal glands, and it fuses to a receptor on a liver cell membrane, changing its shape and causing an enzyme to convert ATP to cyclic AMP. This activates the enzyme protein kinase, which causes glycogen to be converted into glucose. Type 1 diabetes is something a person can be born with. This is when insulin production is reduced, so they have to inject themselves with it. Type 2 develops later in life, often caused by obesity and a bad diet. Either insulin production is compromised or cells become unresponsive to insulin. The kidneys are responsible for controlling blood water levels. Blood enters them via the renal artery into a network of capillaries called the glomerulus, found in the Bowman's capsule. As the blood is under pressure, with the difference created by the different sizes of the efferent and afferent arterioles, Water and all soluble components are forced out. Proteins can't be though. This is ultrafiltration. However, some of these filtered components are useful, like glucose, so they're selectively reabsorbed by co-transport from cells in the convoluted tubule into capillaries. Water is reabsorbed by the loop of Henle. Sodium ions are actively transported out of the ascending limb, creating a water potential. But as the ascending limb cells are impermeable to water, it must move out of the descending limb by osmosis, and it enters the blood in the capillaries. If you haven't drunk water in a while, the low water blood potential is detected by osmoreceptor cells in the hypothalamus. They shrink and the hormone ADH is released via the pituitary gland. It travels to the kidneys where it binds to receptors on the collecting duct, activating the enzyme phosphorylase, which causes aquaporin-carrying vesicles to embed into the cell membrane. This increases the permeability for both water and urea. Urea leaves the collecting duct and water is reabsorbed into the blood. So I hope you found that helpful. Leave a like and a comment if you did, and don't forget to check out our revision app to help you test your knowledge. Links in description.